Podcast. Thanks for joining us today. With me today is Ford.
Hey, how's it going?
And Dan.
Hey, everybody.
And we're going to continue our conversation about the book today, right away and all at once. And we've gotten now to the chapters are weird. It's like the third section, right? Like roughly.
Yeah, third section, second chapter.
No, is it second chapter? I think it's like the 10th chapter or something crazy, isn't it?
It's like the second
Section?
section. I don't know.
I don't know.
It's number 2. That's all I know.
It's number 2?
Yeah,
number
I don't know
2.
what page number it is. I don't know anything about it, but it's just kind of like number 2.
It's the section of the book, wherever that falls, on building a fortress balance sheet. And this one, he talks a lot about having the liquidity, the strength to grow, right? You came up with this plan, you figured out the things that we have to do, and now you got to make sure that you can afford it. So, which spoke to me, right? I was like, I feel this one, you know?
Well, I think it's funny. You and I talked about it when we read it, that it is a little bit, again, though, where you're reading it and you're like, I don't remember certain parts of this. Like, I remember the gist of it, and I remember some application potentially.
Yeah.
That, may or didn't stick with us for the full term. But I didn't, here we go again with it being more personal, the personal side. I don't remember that as much.
Yeah.
In it, but it's one of those things. It's not just liquidity, right? Like, I mean, it is liquidity. He's talking about cash flow and fortress balance sheet, but how he gets there, like backing into the numbers to figure out what a number is and where it's not just cash you're holding physically in your hand necessarily.
It's your ability to spend.
Yes.
Right. Yeah. So, and I agree. Some things that I remembered, some things I didn't. Like, I remembered the Telmex story because I feel like in all of these books, like the author likes to like point fingers a little bit, right? Like, hey, we were right, and here's how we proved it, or whatever. So I sort of remember.
My theory is correct. I have evidence.
Yeah. And which was actually, like, reading that one again, going back, the Telmex story was interesting to me because he talked a lot about, like, and I forget the original company who they were helping make the decision, but they were choosing between like a steel organization. They had some money to invest. They wanted to buy another company, and they were sort of choosing between, like, do we invest in this steel organization or do we invest in this telecommunications organization, which was Telmex at the time, and everything that the author and his team could point to said Telmex. Telmex is the right move. There's some subsidies coming. There's some government involvement coming to kind of make that an easier transition. And the family patriarch of the business was like, nope, it's steel. We've done steel our whole lives. All we do is steel. And they kind of doubled down. And I think that's like a super tough one for me because while I get sort of the sentiment, like, hey, like, which thing, when you talk about the return on the equity and the return on the investment, makes the most sense. Like, just looking at it on paper with zero emotion, zero sentiment, and zero history, it would be easy for a lot of us to say, like, yeah, choose option B, buddy. Don't choose option B. But that guy, the family patriarch, generations and generations of we do steel, picking between steel and telecommunications was like, why would I choose anything except for what we know? And
which that's the part that speaks to you, because one of the main points of business is the core.
Yeah,
when people go, the Home Depot story, when you go outside of your core business, you expose yourself to risk.
Yes, for sure. And
but that doesn't necessarily mean that you stay in your core business in something that mathematically may not make sense.
Sure. Yeah. Right. And I guess that's probably the bigger choice there is like, if we're uncomfortable going that far outside of what we know, then even though it might make sense from an investment perspective, it doesn't necessarily mean we have to double down on what we know if it doesn't make financial sense.
Right.
Right. So, which I thought was interesting because I think about sometimes the way we make decisions, and a lot of it specific to construction is it what we know? Is it with who we know? And is it where we know? So like if we were, looking at that and saying, well, it's what we know, like, would that be a
I
challenging
mean, part of it
decision to make?
is
we're not in that position, but
no, but part of it is really like in anything, not this author specific, but in anything, hindsight's 20/20.
Sure.
Like if you look back, you could always second guess, why you're making a decision. So, it'd be one of those things if if you make a hypothetical purchase of another entity, I think you could, if I said right now, hey, Brian, let's have an immediate debate. And
Right.
you tell me why I should or shouldn't do this. I'm going to take the side of, I'm going to buy this other thing that I think is profitable, but has nothing to do with what we do.
sure.
And you can take the side of, we're going to buy something that you believe you can make money in doing exactly what you do. And
Sure.
then, because what happens is you like discard some of that outside information, the real metrics that they paid the other company to give them. They just threw it out.
yeah.
They said,
Well,
like, we acknowledge that you say that's profitable and this is not,
yeah.
but we believe
I just think
you don't know our business.
I think it's just hard to remove the emotion from it, right? I mean, like Ford, I think you can speak to this a little bit. With some of the acquisitions that you've looked at and done, I think it's hard to remove the emotion of it, right? Like it's a business, maybe there's some family legacy there. Maybe you grew up around the ownership or whatever the case may be. So like whether or not it made sense on paper, which we never would really consider if it didn't make sense on paper.
It has to do both.
Yeah, it's got to do both, right?
But you can look by some of the impacts, some of the inefficiencies or impacts that people might say, well, that might not be the best choice. And you can sort of look to say, I can remedy those and I can make this better.
Potentially. Yeah,
Right.
potentially.
Well, but I think that the reality of all that is that there is so many different factors involved there. Like the emotional factor is kind of the second piece, I guess I call it. First is the math, right? Math is math. You can't really dance with math too much. But then afterwards, then there's the ability to kind of take in the other pieces because, someone once told me like, whatever they're selling is not what you're buying. You're buying like, because the reality is if you're looking at something and you don't see potential, then it doesn't matter what the math is.
Sure.
There is no strategy to go forward.
Yeah. And usually you're buying something for a reason.
Right.
It's
You have your own reasons, not whatever their reasons are probably do not match yours. And that's kind of how, you're just trying to meet in the middle somewhere.
Right.
Well, and right at like the intersection, right at the intersection of these two things is exactly what the book is about, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's about, at its core, this book is about someone taking Bain's model, right? Bain Capital's model, and saying, this is how you do this, to identify underperforming companies that are surviving and doing okay, but underperforming, and how you would make them worth more. And then he takes that and applies it to how you could identify before that happens it in your own life, your own personal life, your own professional life, your own company, and then fix the problem before an activist investor comes in. So I think part of the rub there that is hard, even in that story where he likes to say, like, I was right? And he's right because history said he was right. But you almost question that the owners that bought the steel company believed in their minds that there was some like satisfactorily underperforming nature to that business that they could probably remedy because of their experience in steel. So the rough part becomes, what if they had stayed involved? So if Bain's wing had stayed involved, could they have turned that? And would it have turned less disastrous? Like maybe it would have worked, and sort of that's one of the things I think when you factor in acquisitions that Ford has made is when he says, I'm not buying the thing, and you take, you take Ford's wearing a hat of one of the acquisitions, right? So you take that acquisition. We weren't buying the actual fuel in the tanks. That's not what Ford bought. I mean, he did buy that, but in theory, he was buying what he thought that company could do as a performing company. And that becomes a very hard metric to look at, though Bain developed a really good way to do it. So I'm not taking away from Bain's position that Telmex was the obvious choice. I'm saying in the heart of an acquisition, it gets tricky to your point, because the emotional factor is not just emotion of, I like that company. It's also faith in oneself, confidence to say, like, I believe that I can turn this around. I can improve this thing. I can make it worth more than I'm paying for it. And And that risk is healthy and what people allows them to grow, but also the same thing that takes out, entities is when you take on something, you're like, I can turn this around. And then you watch the little thing choke out the big thing because it just drags it down.
Yeah.
So it's a tricky piece of that. The whole acquisition business that Bain Capital is in is very volatile and tricky.
Yeah. And that's what was sitting kind of in the back of my head was like, if you approach each transaction, right, as an investment, like how when a lot of times when you hear about stories like this, whether it's Bain, whether it's private equity, whatever it might be, those types of entities are typically looking at the return on investment. How fast can we get our money back?
3 to 5 years.
Right? It has to happen in a 3 to 5 year window. If it's 5, it's probably too slow.
Mm-hmm.
And then can we take this thing and sell it for more than we bought it for? Right? So can I get my money out of it and then make a profit on it in the sale? And that's can't be our approach because everything that we've done to date has been very long vision, right? Very long play. Like can we grow to accomplish a thing? Can we grow to, and sometimes it's tangible, revenue or net profit goals. And sometimes it's how many lives have we impacted in the community or things like that. So I don't know. The variables get really thick.
Yeah.
I think the main thing is when I look at things at the core, I believe in the trades. So as long as it's trade based, I think it ties together. It might not tie directly together, but if it's in the trades and we got hardworking people involved, that is my tie together. It might not be direct and linear, but that is the tie as long as it's trade based because we need good people doing work to, we talk about, the pipes in the ground or whatever it is, or anything that has people still working. That's what I believe in. And so that's how my ties work with some of these things. Even if they don't make logical sense, it's that there is a trade base to each one of the different things that we're involving in, or we're helping people, we're helping the community, whatever it is, not to be altruistic, but that's part of it. But I think that there is the two different models. There is the PE model, which works for people. But on the other side, there is quite a trail behind them that isn't always as beneficial long term. In the short term, it's very beneficial for the people that are involved. Long term, it's not as beneficial because of the fact that they only have that short-sighted window. As you said, we have the long view. We're at the age we want to be in doing this for X amount more years. It's not about the quick. Yeah. And those guys their model is set up. They don't deny it. They're not trying to fake you out, but their goal is we have a short window. We're trying to maximize everything we can in that short window. And whatever happens after that is no longer our problem.
Yeah.
And when you're building people and you believe in people, that model doesn't work as well because the people are what drive what we do. And they're not, dispensable toys.
Yeah. It's just such a hard model to sustain for a long period of time. Right. Because it does. It capitalizes on trying to basically run at maximum capacity for it's
24 months.
It's a sprint, right? Can we run at maximum capacity with almost no margin for error for 24 to 36 months and then cash out?
Yes,
and that's just really hard to sustain because especially I look at the trend of how we've grown and we have at times run at maximum capacity, very little margin for error. But it's usually for a period of 12 to 18 months, 12 to 24 months to kind of get us to the next sort of benchmark or tier or hump. And then, we sort of get a little fat while we kind of catch our breath, catch up, and then kind of sprint to the next plateau. So
and so we're using the language sprint, and so we love sports analogies, and it does sort of, it applies to track, right? Like if you make it like track and field, like you can run 100 or a 200, you could even sprint a 400. But when you start to get further distances out, at some point you can't sprint. And so we want to run a race where we're going to, like I think back to, we would always run around the football field, run the track, right? So like you're going to sprint the corner and you're going to jog the straightaway, or sprint the straightaway and jog the corner, right? Like what you can't do is run
Yazos,
right? You can't
Yazos 8s.
I mean, you can't just keep running. I mean, you can, but at what cost? Like it will cost you something,
sure.
whether it be people, in our environment of work, it's either going to cost you people, or it could cost you, the health of your equipment, or it could cost you your culture, right? Because if you just keep running like that, then it's hard to say, the word we pulled out of this book earlier was that work-life integration. Mm-hmm. It's hard to have that kind of integration if you're just going to run full bore, like, well, let's run wide open. But it is fun to run wide open. You know what I mean? Like it is, and I think it can be fun for the whole group as long as you understand. And so when I say the group, I even just take us as 3 people, with each different job responsibilities. It can be fun for Ford to say, like, what can we do? Let's see what growth looks like. It can be fun for me to say operationally, we're going to go, 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 go. And it can be fun for you to watch us raise our top line and our bottom line, as long as we can do it in a healthy manner. But at some point you have to slow down, because it's also bad for each of us. If I have to run full bore the whole time, I'm going to run into labor problems where the team is going to be unhappy and feel stressed, and it's going to start to impact not only their work, but their home life. You're going to start to feel that I'm not able to sustain things with capital. I'm outgrowing the capital, the fortress balance sheet. I'm going to start to take too much of the cash for right now. And I can say to you, and we've had these discussions where I say, Brian, don't worry about it. The money's coming. I'm just going to, as long as I'm making money, if I keep making money, we're fine. And that's sort of, we can get back to the book with that sort of thing. And Ford can the same thing, say, wait a minute, this was a great idea, but where are we going? Like what's, and sort of, we viewed that with the first time we did this exercise, right? Where we made a plan and then we raced right to that plan, but we did not follow the book's own guidance and make the next plan, which could have said, okay, now slow down and figure out where you want to be again. Or it could have said race again. You know what I mean? But we just continued to do it. And we sort of let the creek meander at that point instead of then following a path. And that's, I think, the biggest guidance I continue to get out of this book is, as soon as you reach some goal, you need to establish another goal. Otherwise you can lose focus on where you're actually trying to go.
Sure. Yeah.
But a big piece of it is that balance sheet, right? Is whether it's cash or equity or any number of ways that you can have it to be protected for when something happens, right? Whether it be market driven or, job specific, you need to be able to survive this thing that you don't know what it is, and the book really hones in on that too, on a personal side. I mean, it's funny, you like the Telmex story. The Jamie Dimon story is more like, he's somebody I hear a lot about, and you know what I mean? And so his story is interesting to me, you know what I mean? That he sat on so much capital that he was able to invest it at just the right time, right? That idea that if you don't want to like have a war chest of capital, like on my side, behavior wise, like I would always want to spend, right? I would say, like, Brian, I acknowledge that we could have that money there, but if we allocate that money to this, it can be making more money. And so if you make it your personal side, it could be in the market, it could be in varying degrees of aggressiveness in the market. But by stockpiling money and liquidity, he was able to just wait for the right time. And when he did it, all of a sudden, he appeared both the savior and he made a lot of money. You know what I mean? Like he helped everybody else and meanwhile made a killing.
Yeah.
Well, Warren Buffett did the same thing. And I just think that, like, I keep coming back to, as we read this book the first time, I don't know if I skipped pages, but the whole personal part, I mean, maybe just I wasn't at the point where it was sinking in, but like the personal part, but like we do the thing with the Ramsey plan for our team to like, we see some of the older team members that have been in our industry for a long time and they put their money away and then like they could take time off or they can, whatever, because they know that the ebbs and flows of the work schedule in the construction or, like we've seen those people that model it in a way that is good for everybody. And I just keep, every time I think of it, that like always just keeps coming back to me. Like, I don't know why, but like we're focusing on it for the business only. And we just like, just skipped right over, just like, oh yeah, all right, keep on moving. All right, keep on moving.
And to be really like personal about it and open, because I try to be that way. It's my mother-in-law, even now, retired, lived on the salary she made when she was like 18 to 22 years old. Mm-hmm. And she became very successful and did what she did in corporate America, working for a big company. And never changed how she lived, right? And that's part of this Fortress balance sheet thing, is you identify your most expensive years, right? Personally. And then you can use a multiplier out to figure how much money you would need to be financially free. Now, that doesn't mean you have to stop working, but it means that in theory, you can't be touched, right? Like you could survive at your lifestyle projected out until you're not on this planet anymore. But one of the things that they really hit on, just for a minute, but they hit on it, is not allowing your spending to grow to your wages, right? And my mother-in-law did a good job of that. That's a really hard thing to do. I mean, it's like genuinely, we struggle with it every day because there's certain things. Aaron and I are not frivolous with our spending. We're very careful with our spending, but we have decided to spend money on certain things like the girls' education, and it's not cheap. It's a choice. And it's not cheap, but it does beg the question every time I look at them. It's the oddest thing, because I always say when I watch them at school or I get a report or I see certain things, I know exactly what I'm paying for and I'm totally okay with it. And then I look at my budget and I'm like, I'm not so okay with this. You know what I mean? You know what I mean? So it's a really odd feeling because of what it does, of what it means. But it's why it's so important in this chapter, I think, that you back into the number. Like if I can accept that that's going to be the cost because that's the way I want to raise the girls and the environment I want them in and how I want to do their education, then that just becomes a given.
Right.
And now I have to work backwards and figure out how do I live in that world? How do I do that? And what choices do I make? But you have to be really careful that you don't do it blindly, because much like making the plan, getting to the goal, and then having no other plan, if you are successful, you know what I mean, in work, in life, and you can get to a point where you're making the money you want to make, you have to be really careful to not expand your spending to that without making another plan. Because if you do that, then you have to remake the plan and say, okay, now I don't need X anymore. I need Y because I'm going to spend more.
Yeah. Well, but not only that, the funny part, I was just thinking through this, is like the book's name, Right Away and All at Once. This is like the one place where he does kind of not shy away from that, but I mean, like he shows you that math where you can like work it out and then divvy it back up. So it's not this is one thing with like money where it's like, it is not an immediate magic bullet.
Right.
I was talking to a friend last night and he's, into like Bitcoin or something. And like, that's just like this instant whatever, right? And not my world. But we were talking, both of us, we've both been in our careers for 20 plus years. And like, people are like, oh, how'd you get there? And it's like, I've been doing the same thing for 20 plus years. Wake up in the morning, Monday through Friday, you know what I mean? Like, there is no magic bullet to this stuff. It is a time-based process. And, there's decisions along the way that make differences. But the reality is, it's just, there is no magic bullet.
You know what I thought about as you were just saying the Right Away and All at Once thing. And I think I want to get your thoughts on it if I'm right, or if you agree, not that I'm right. Is for me, the Right Away and All at Once thing is not about achieving something. It's about decision making. The way I interpret that title, and as I read the book, both the first and the second time, what he's talking about is you have to make the decisions right now, like all at once. Like, don't drag it out. Just identify the next decision that you have to make and make the decision. The next thing that you have to do, the most important thing, and do that thing. It's not about that you'll achieve something right away or all at once, because it's not. It's going to take a long time. You know what I mean? You can make and his plans are set up that way, right? Like you can make a 3-week plan, a 6-week plan, a 6-month plan, a 1-year plan, a 3 or 5. You can go out as far as you want. Well, I mean, you shouldn't really go beyond 3 or 5 because you need to rebuild the plan. But you know what I mean? Then you just build another plan behind that. But the key for me in the title that I always took it was, you have to do these things right now and all the way, because if you don't, then they're not going to be impactful. And then you might as well just start all over again, because now you have a different set of givens, so you're going to have to make a different decision. Did you guys sort of interpret it that way, or is that?
Yeah, I took it in a similar fashion, mostly about like choosing the things that are most impactful and then doing them. Not necessarily about like making the next decision with immediacy, but I think it's similar fashion, right? Like choosing the things that are most impactful, choosing the things that you can do with some layer or level of immediacy or urgency.
Yeah.
And then actually doing it.
Yeah, how about you, Ford?
Yeah. Makes sense. I mean, I didn't really look at it that way. But it was more of that, the immediacy, I guess, of making the decisions with that goal, because then we talked about it last or 2 weeks ago, whatever, about like all the different things that go into making a decision.
Yeah.
And so if you have a target, then when you're making those decisions, they're not made for you, but it's a lot easier to make the decision because they're part of like that path. They're not like all over the place. You're trying to get to a certain place at some point. So it's otherwise you just, those data points aren't there to kind of keep you on the straight and narrow.
And I feel like we weren't going to have this podcast today, and we don't like to date ourselves, but we weren't going to have this podcast today and me not make it some association to the game, right? To the Super Bowl.
2 greens.
Right. We're both wearing green. But I watching that game, it relates to this for me. Like, in other words, this was not quick. This wasn't that, back in the day with baseball when they hired guns and you go get David Cone and you bring in 10 free agents and all of a sudden you're good. This was picking linemen over a 5-year period. This was trusting that Jalen Hurts, while he holds the ball too long and all these other things that people would rip him for, that his like core personality would work, and they had a plan. Like, the reality is they had a plan that they built, and they said, this is what we're going to do, and this is how we're going to do it. And they stuck to their plan, and their plan didn't get them where they were going 2 years ago. And they like looked at it, made a couple changes, and went back, ran the plan again. Didn't work last year. This year it worked, but it wasn't. And the Chiefs, while they lost, it's the same thing. Like, the Chiefs saw something in Mahomes, and they saw something, and they put together this team with Reed, and then they made it work. And you can go back, Brady, like the most successful of these franchises that you've seen over time, the 49ers, like you can go way back. It's people making a plan and a commitment that they're going to do something a certain way. And then based on some data points that they believe they can do it. And then they go do it. But it's because they've set this goal. They've set not only the goal, but the path, right? So, because anybody can say, like, every team on next August is going to say their goal is to win the Super Bowl.
Sure. Yeah.
Right. But you could probably rule out 50, 60% of the teams right away. There's no way that they can, like, the things that would have to happen, it's just not going to happen, and narrow it down and say, okay, here's the teams that have a shot. They have the shot because of a plan that was set in place long before they got to training camp.
Yeah.
And I think that the book sort of speaks to that. It says, like, if you do not create a situation where you have liquidity and you have the ability to sustain a problem, then you won't survive. And what I struggle with as I read that chapter is what happens when the problem hits? Like, what's the next piece? Like, okay, problem hits. You felt like you were in a good position. You do the right thing and work your way through the position. Obviously you got to work your way out of it. But what does that look like? And so I started to look for that answer in the book as I was reading, to say, okay, it's really simple to say, okay, well, you just go do the things you're doing, get profitable, put the money back away. But it's hard to do that. It's hard to come out of a problem and say, okay, now let's put our nose to the grindstone and just go back to work, like Ford said. And we're going to work, and you and I have had that discussion. We're just going to go to work now. And we're going to go to work, and there's no other, that's the way. There's no magic bullet, like Ford said. There's no secret.
Yeah.
You just got to go to work.
Yeah. And it's, I think, like, to reference the question, like, what do you do if, the stress test didn't work, right? Or you blow through something that surpasses what the stress test says you should have had to endure. You got to rebuild the balance sheet. You got to rebuild the liquidity and the cash position. I like the line in the book where he said, like, you gotta treat your liquidity like an operator treats his fuel. Like, his machine's not going to work without his fuel, right? The organization's not going to work unless it's got fuel to burn. And the only time you have too much fuel is when you're on fire. Yeah. So I think that, it sort of speaks volumes to, like, the importance of it.
Yeah. No, I think that the unique part is, like, or your injector goes bad and it starts dumping in, because I was watching something about the other day.
Ford got some other ways you can have too much fuel.
Yeah.
That's a good try, though.
But no, I mean, I think that's the key, is that, and that's the neat part about this. Like, you read it and you're like, oh, okay, like, eye-opening it to a point, but literally it is that simple. Like, get back and do it again and get it to the point, and surpass maybe the point you had before, because it got you to that edge, but now you need to protect it even more.
Sure.
And, there's a lot of uncertainty out there in the world with just geopolitical, just stuff that we always ignore on this podcast because it doesn't affect what we're talking about. It affects us all, but it doesn't affect us, in this conversation. But, the only thing you can do is put your head down and get back to it, because, you can only control what you can control. Everything else is pretty much, out of your hands.
And getting back to the grind is
almost therapeutic.
And it's good for everyone. Like, in other words, you know what I mean? If the equipment runs and the people work, that's good for the people. They get paid. If they get paid and the equipment runs and the work is there, well, that's good for us because we can manage the work. You know what I mean? And if the work gets managed and it gets done and we win more work, that's good for the company. And if the company succeeds, it'll come right back around and be good for us again.
Circular process.
So at the end of the day, I guess that's the answer. When you get tested, you got to get back up again, right? Like that's when just keep chopping, right? Like it's.
Well, and I think we've said it before, like there's no quit. No. And like the only way is through.
Yeah.
So as long as you're committed to the only way being through, now the only choice is find the way through.
Yep.
Right. It's not turn around. It's not go backwards. No. It's not stop in the middle of it.
No. Pivot.
Right. Pivot.
Our favorite word.
Yeah, you don't pivot.
Yeah. So.
Yeah. And I mean, it's funny. That's probably why it won't cover a whole lot in the book, because the answer, there's no magic bullet to that. Like he can explain to you how to look at whether you should buy Telmex or the steel company, or how Jamie Dimon did this, or how, any of the examples, how Home Depot, the mistake. Like, he can show you all that, but the way back is just go do what you do. It's not a really interesting story. You know what I mean? It's just what happens.
Yeah. It's probably a fair place to wrap it up. I hope you got something from this, folks, and keep coming back to hear how we mentally and verbally process through the next sections, chapters. Segments, whatever they might be called. Thanks for joining us.